The rain had started just as she reached the porch. It came in sudden, heavy drops that splashed against the steps and blurred the garden beyond. Maya laughed softly, shaking the water from her hair as she rang the bell. The smell of wet grass and jasmine filled the air, and when the door opened, her best friend, Lily, appeared with a wide grin. "You're soaked." Lily laughed, pulling her inside. "Come on, let's get you a towel. You look like you fought a storm." "It's fine," Maya said, smiling. "You know I love the rain." She stepped into the warmth of the house, the same one she'd spent half her childhood in. Every photo on the wall, every creak in the floorboard, felt like memory. Only this time, something was different. There was a quiet energy in the air, something she couldn't place yet. They dropped their bags in Lily's room and talked about everything: college, old crushes, exams, the same easy chatter that always came naturally. Hours passed in laughter and teasing until the sound of a car door closing echoed outside. Lily looked up. "Oh. I totally forgot, Ethan's back this weekend." Maya froze for half a second. "Ethan? Your brother Ethan?" Lily grinned. "Yeah, he didn't tell anyone. Surprise visit, I guess. He said he wanted to crash here for a few days before heading to the city again." Maya hadn't seen Ethan in almost 4 years. Back then, he'd been the annoying older brother who stole snacks and teased her mercilessly whenever she came over. She remembered his messy hair, his sarcastic smirk, and how he'd roll his eyes when she and Lily would watch movies and sing along off-key. She didn't know what to expect now, but she didn't expect him. When the door opened, and he stepped inside, the air in the hallway seemed to change. He'd grown taller, broader. His voice was deeper when he spoke, casual but sure. His hair was darker, shorter, and when his eyes met hers, it was like every sound in the house faded for a heartbeat. "Maya," he said, half in disbelief, half in amusement. She blinked, caught between surprise and something she didn't understand yet. "Hey, Ethan." That grin, still the same, but different somehow, spread across his face. "Wow. You grew up." Lily rolled her eyes. "Don't start flirting with my best friend, Ethan." He smirked. "I'm just saying hello." But the way his gaze lingered made Maya's pulse quicken. Dinner was loud and familiar, filled with chatter and jokes. But beneath it all, Maya felt the weight of his glances. Every time she laughed, she could feel his eyes find her again. When she reached for the salt, his hand brushed hers, and neither of them moved right away. After dinner, Lily ran upstairs to grab a movie, leaving them alone in the kitchen. The silence felt louder than before. "So," he said softly, leaning against the counter, "still afraid of thunderstorms?" She smiled, trying to sound unaffected. "Not anymore. I grew up, remember?" His eyes darkened slightly, amused. "Yeah, you did." There was nothing flirtatious in his words, and yet everything was. She couldn't explain why her heartbeat refused to slow down. He was just standing there, close enough for her to notice the scent of rain still clinging to him, something clean and unfamiliar and yet comforting. "Do you still draw?" he asked suddenly. "You used to sit by the window for hours with that sketchbook." She laughed quietly. "You remember that?" He tilted his head, that same teasing half-smile returning. "I remember more than you think." Before she could reply, Lily's voice called from upstairs. "Guys. Movie starting." Ethan's gaze stayed on her a moment longer before he turned away. She exhaled, realizing she'd been holding her breath. They settled into the living room, lights dimmed, thunder still grumbling outside. Lily lay between them on the couch, oblivious to the tension threading the air. Halfway through the movie, Maya felt Ethan shift beside her, stretching an arm along the back of the couch. It wasn't touching her, but it was close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating through the space between them. The storm outside grew heavier, flashes of lightning painting brief silver across his face. Every time the light flickered, she caught the glint in his eyes, calm, steady, and aware. When the credits rolled, Lily yawned and went to her room, muttering something about early classes. Maya stood to grab her bag, but Ethan's voice stopped her. "Hey," he said quietly. She turned. He was standing at the edge of the couch, his hand in his pocket, the faintest smile on his lips. "It's good to see you again, Sunshine." She froze. It was the nickname he'd given her when they were kids, the one he'd used to tease her when she was shy or upset. But now, the way he said it, it wasn't teasing. It was low, warm, and deliberate. Her breath caught as thunder rolled again, deep and distant. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then he smiled, that slow, knowing smile that sent a flutter through her chest, and turned to leave the room. And Maya stood there, her heart racing, realizing that nothing about this weekend was going to be simple. The morning sun poured through the kitchen windows, scattering light across the table where Lily flipped through her notes. Maya sat beside her, pretending to read but finding herself distracted by every sound coming from behind her, the quiet footsteps, the clatter of mugs, the low hum of a familiar voice. Ethan. He moved around the kitchen like he owned it, sleeves rolled up, hair still damp from a shower. He greeted them casually, but his eyes met hers for a split second, long enough for her to remember the way he'd said sunshine the night before. That one word had echoed in her mind all night, chasing sleep away. "Coffee?" he asked. Lily groaned. "Yes, please. Make it strong." "Maya needs it too, she was up sketching half the night." Maya tried to sound casual. "I couldn't sleep." Ethan turned, handing her a mug. "Maybe your mind was busy," he said softly, like he knew exactly why. Her fingers brushed his when she took the cup. Just a fleeting touch, but the warmth lingered. The day moved lazily. They studied, laughed, and argued about nothing important. But everywhere Maya went, he seemed to be there. Passing her in the hallway, brushing past her shoulder at the doorway, leaning in just close enough that she could smell that faint trace of cedar and rain. By evening, Lily was busy on a video call, and Maya wandered to the porch for some air. The world outside was calm, washed clean from last night's storm. She heard the door creak open behind her and didn't need to turn to know who it was. "Couldn't stay inside either?" he asked, stepping beside her. She smiled faintly. "Too quiet in there." For a while they said nothing, watching the light fade. When he finally spoke, his voice was low, almost thoughtful. "You've changed, you know. You used to fill every silence with questions. Now you keep them all inside." She glanced at him. "Maybe I learned not every question needs an answer." He smiled, soft, almost proud. "Still stubborn. And you're still annoying." Their laughter blended with the evening breeze, easy and warm. But then he looked at her again, and the laughter faded. His expression was unreadable, his gaze steady. "Maya," he said quietly. The way he said her name made her chest tighten. It wasn't playful or casual, it was slow, deliberate, like he was tasting the sound of it. She looked away first, breaking the spell. "You shouldn't look at me like that." He raised an eyebrow. "Like what?" "Like you're trying to figure me out." "Maybe I am," he said. "Maybe I've been trying since yesterday." Before she could answer, Lily's voice called from inside, asking for help with dinner. Maya stepped back, grateful for the interruption. But her pulse didn't calm, not even after she left the porch. That night, she found herself restless again. The house had gone quiet, only the faint hum of the refrigerator and the steady rhythm of rain starting up again. She walked downstairs to get water, barefoot, the wooden floor cool beneath her feet. Light spilled from the living room. Ethan was there, half reclined on the couch, scrolling through his phone. He looked up when she entered, smiling in that lazy way that made her heart stutter. "Couldn't sleep?" "Guess not," she said, clutching her glass. He patted the couch beside him. "Sit. I won't bite." She hesitated, then sank into the corner of the couch, keeping what she hoped was a safe distance. They talked about everything and nothing, the classes he took, the people they both used to know, the music they still liked. The more he talked, the more she saw traces of the boy she remembered hidden beneath the man he'd become. At one point, he leaned closer to show her something on his phone, a photo from a hiking trip, and his shoulder brushed hers. Neither of them moved away. "You're doing that again," she whispered. "What?" "Looking at me." He smiled faintly. "Maybe I like what I see." Her breath caught. For a second, the air seemed to stop moving. She wanted to speak, to say something to break it, but before she could, his phone buzzed with an incoming call. He glanced at the screen, frowning. "Give me a second," he said, standing and stepping toward the hallway. She nodded, though her thoughts were a blur. She hadn't meant for their conversation to drift into that dangerous territory, yet it had, effortlessly. She sipped her water and tried not to listen. But his voice carried softly through the half-open door. I know," he said, his tone low, frustrated. "I shouldn't feel this way about her, but I can't stop." Maya froze. Her fingers tightened around the glass. He was silent for a moment, then said, "No, Lily doesn't know. And she can't." Her heartbeat thundered in her ears. She stepped back from the doorway, afraid he'd hear her breathing. The glass trembled slightly in her hand. When he ended the call, she was already halfway up the stairs, her heart racing, not from fear, but from the truth she could no longer deny. The second storm of the weekend arrived without warning. One minute the night was calm, the next the wind was racing down the street, rattling the windows and filling the house with the sound of rain. The lights flickered once, twice, then steadied again. Lily groaned, curling deeper under a blanket. "If the power goes out, I'm blaming you, Maya," she mumbled, half asleep from their late-night movie marathon. Maya smiled faintly. "You can blame me for the popcorn too." Ethan sat at the far end of the couch, thumbing through a book he didn't seem to be reading. "She's going to fall asleep in 5 minutes," he said softly. "She always does," Maya whispered. And just like that, Lily's breathing evened out, her head dropping against the cushion. The room dimmed as the storm deepened. Outside, rain lashed the windows, thunder rolled like a slow drumbeat. Maya pulled the blanket tighter around her shoulders. "It's louder than last night." Ethan set the book aside. "You still hate storms?" "I don't hate them," she said, though her fingers clenched the edge of the blanket. "They just make me feel small." He gave a quiet laugh. "You were terrified of them when you were 12. You used to sit under the table until it passed." She smiled at the memory. "And you'd scare me more by sneaking up and shouting boom." "I was an idiot," he said. "Still are sometimes," she teased, but her voice softened. Thunder rumbled again, longer this time, and the lights dimmed once more. In that flickering glow, he looked at her differently, like he was seeing her through all the years they'd missed. "You've changed," he said finally. "How?" "You used to talk about everything. Now you hold half of it in. You don't laugh the same way. It's quieter." She didn't answer at first. "Maybe people grow up. Maybe I learned not everyone listens." "I would," he said. She looked up, startled by the sincerity in his voice. "You?" "Yeah. You think I didn't notice how you disappeared from here? Lily talked about you all the time, but it wasn't the same." The rain drummed harder, like it was punctuating each word. Maya exhaled slowly. "Sometimes it's easier to vanish. Nobody asks why you left, they just forget." "I didn't forget." His words hung there, heavy and unguarded. The clock ticked somewhere in the silence that followed. She could hear the storm moving closer, the hiss of wind against the walls. She could feel his gaze, warm and patient, waiting for her to look back. When she did, the air between them felt alive. "You shouldn't say things like that," she whispered. "Why not?" "Because I don't know what they mean." He leaned forward slightly, elbows on his knees. "Maybe I don't either. I just know that every time I see you, I forget what I was supposed to say." Her heartbeat quickened. "Ethan." Lightning flashed, illuminating the room for a single brilliant second, painting his face in silver light. When darkness returned, he was still watching her, expression unreadable. The wind howled. Lily shifted in her sleep but didn't wake. Maya stood, needing distance, but her legs felt unsteady. She walked to the window and watched the rain race down the glass. Behind her, his voice came softly through the dark. "You always stood there during storms," he said. "Said the lightning made you feel alive." She smiled faintly. "I guess some things don't change." "Some do," he murmured. When she turned, he was closer than before, only a step away. The space between them seemed to shrink with every heartbeat. Thunder rolled, shaking the window panes. He reached up, hesitated for just a breath, then brushed a strand of hair away from her face. His fingers barely grazed her skin, but the touch sent warmth rippling through her chest. For a moment, neither of them moved. Rain, thunder, the faint sound of Lily breathing, all of it faded beneath that single, unspoken question hanging between them. Her breath caught. His voice, barely a whisper, "You still look like sunshine." And then another crash of thunder split the sky, leaving her frozen there, half afraid to move, half afraid he'd stop looking at her that way. The morning light was soft, slipping through the curtains and tracing the edges of her face. She pulled the blanket tighter, half dreaming, half awake, until she realized the scent lingering around her wasn't hers. It was his. The warmth, the faint musk, the rain-soaked cotton, his jacket. Her heart gave a small, traitorous flutter as last night's memories drifted back, the thunder, his voice low and steady, the way his hand brushed her hair. She'd meant to give the jacket back, really, but somehow she'd fallen asleep holding it like a secret. When she came downstairs, he was already there. Coffee mug in hand, smile easy, eyes unreadable. "Morning," he said casually, as if the storm hadn't changed everything. She murmured something about breakfast, keeping her head down, her fingers clutching the fabric of the borrowed jacket. Every time she moved, his scent stirred, teasing her. He didn't say a word about it, but his glance lingered, just a heartbeat too long. The air between them was full of almosts. At breakfast, he laughed with her best friend, acted like nothing had happened, like he hadn't looked at her that way last night. But when she caught his reflection in the window, he wasn't looking at anyone else. She tried to distract herself, but everything betrayed her, the soft drape of his jacket over her shoulders, the way her skin remembered his nearness. Her best friend was scrolling through her phone, unaware, humming along to some old song. The ordinary morning felt like a lie she had to keep telling. "Hey," her friend said suddenly, glancing up with a teasing grin. "If my brother flirts with you again, I'll scream." The words froze her mid-breath. The mug nearly slipped from her hand. And then, right on cue, he walked in from the kitchen. His eyes met hers, steady, unblinking. A flicker of a smile touched his lips, but there was something else behind it, something dangerous, unspoken. Neither of them said a word. The room went quiet except for the faint hum of the fridge and the thud of her heartbeat. And in that silence, his eyes told her everything he didn't dare say. The afternoon sun hung low, painting everything in a soft gold glow. The air smelled of rain from the night before, damp earth and something that felt like a beginning. She wasn't supposed to go with him, her best friend had begged off, claiming a headache, and somehow, it was just the two of them. An errand, that's all it was. 30 minutes, maybe 40. Easy. Harmless. But as soon as he turned the car key and the engine hummed to life, she knew nothing about it would feel harmless. The drive started in silence. The radio played softly, a song she half recognized, the kind that fills space when words are too heavy. She tried to look out the window, to watch the blur of trees and storefronts, but her reflection stared back, flushed cheeks, eyes too bright. He cleared his throat, glanced her way, then back at the road. "You okay?" he asked, his voice quieter than usual. She nodded, forcing a small smile. "Yeah. Just tired." He didn't push, didn't tease. Just nodded. But there was a weight in the car, thick and invisible, as if both of them were afraid to breathe too deeply. They stopped at a little grocery on the edge of town, the kind with flickering lights and the smell of old wood. The errand was simple: pick up a few things for dinner. Bread. Milk. Coffee. Yet every moment felt magnified, like the world had shrunk to the space between them. When he reached for a carton on the top shelf, she stepped closer to help, and his arm brushed against hers. Neither of them moved. "Got it," he said, his voice low. But his hand stayed there for just a second too long before he pulled away. Outside, the air was crisp, the sky pale blue, the road still glistening from the earlier rain. They got back in the car, and this time, he didn't turn on the radio. The silence was alive with unsaid things. Halfway home, it happened. A dog darted across the road, a flash of fur, a sharp yelp of tires. She gasped, instinctively reaching for something to hold on to. His arm shot out before she could move, pressing against her chest to keep her back. The car jerked, then stilled. For a heartbeat, neither of them breathed. Her pulse thundered in her ears. His hand was still on her, firm, protective, trembling. When she looked at him, he was already looking at her, eyes dark, jaw tense. "You okay?" he whispered. She nodded, barely. "Yeah. You stopped in time." He didn't move his hand. Their faces were close now, closer than they'd ever been. The air between them felt electric. Her breath hitched, his eyes flicked down to her lips, once, then again. "Don't look at me like that," she whispered, barely audible. He gave a quiet, broken laugh. "Like what?" Like you mean it." His hand dropped slowly from her chest, but he didn't lean back. Instead, his thumb brushed the side of her face, tracing a raindrop that wasn't there. "Maybe I do." The words hung between them, raw and dangerous. She could feel his breath now, could see the pulse beating just below his throat. If he leaned in, just an inch more. The blaring honk of a car behind them shattered the moment. He blinked, cursed softly, then turned the key again. The spell broke. The world returned. They drove the rest of the way in silence. Her heart didn't stop pounding. She stared out the window, but every reflection was of him, his hand reaching, his eyes searching, the almost that didn't happen. When they reached home, he parked without a word. She unbuckled, trying to steady her hands. "Thanks for not hitting the dog," she said lamely. He smiled, small, strained. "Yeah. Anytime." She got out first, feeling the cool air hit her face, grateful for the distance. But as she walked up the driveway, she felt it, his gaze on her back, following her until the door shut. That night, she lay in bed, replaying everything, the drive, the look, the words he didn't say. Sleep wouldn't come. Her phone buzzed softly on the nightstand. A message. No name, just an unknown number. She hesitated, then opened it. "I can't stop thinking about you." Her breath caught. She stared at the words until they blurred. Then, slowly, her lips parted in a trembling whisper. "It's him." She told herself it would be simple: avoid him, stay busy, keep her thoughts somewhere, anywhere else. But every time she tried, the universe seemed to laugh in her face. It started with the small things: bumping into him in the hallway, their hands brushing when they both reached for the same mug, his voice drifting from another room when she least expected it. Every time, her chest tightened, her pulse stuttered, and she remembered every moment they'd almost crossed that invisible line. She started waking earlier to miss breakfast with him. She volunteered to help her best friend at school projects, to spend less time at the house. But somehow, he was always there, passing her on the driveway, leaning against his car with that unreadable look, as if he knew exactly what she was doing and why. And maybe he did. That afternoon, she went to the store alone, or so she thought. The moment she stepped out into the fading sunlight, she saw him leaning against the wall outside, hands in his pockets, eyes on her like he'd been waiting all along. "Running away again?" he asked softly. She froze mid-step. I'm not running. His mouth curved, just slightly. Then why does it feel like you are? She looked down, pretending to search for something in her bag. Because it's easier. He didn't say anything for a long moment. Then she felt him move closer, slowly, carefully, until his shadow touched hers. Easier doesn't always mean right, he murmured. Her breath caught. For a heartbeat, neither of them moved. The air between them buzzed like static, filled with all the things they weren't saying. She wanted to tell him that she couldn't stop thinking about him either, that every time she tried to move on, something inside her pulled back toward him. But the words tangled on her tongue. I shouldn't, she whispered. Then don't. His voice was low, steady, almost pleading. But don't lie to yourself either. Their eyes met, and it felt like gravity itself had shifted, like the world had gone quiet just for them. She wanted to step back, to say something, anything that made sense. Instead, she did nothing, and that was its own kind of answer. Days passed, but it didn't get easier. They kept finding each other in the most inconvenient moments, when she was laughing with her friend in the kitchen and looked up to see him watching her from the doorway, when he brushed past her in the narrow hallway, his sleeve grazing hers, his scent lingering just long enough to make her dizzy. She began to dread being alone with him, but she also couldn't stop wanting it. One evening, after dinner, she went to return a book he'd lent her. He was in his room, music playing softly, the golden light of sunset spilling across his desk. She meant to drop it off and leave, but he turned, catching her before she could escape. You've been avoiding me, he said, leaning back against his chair, studying her. I've been busy. He smiled faintly. You're a terrible liar. Something inside her snapped a little. What do you want me to say? She blurted. That it's hard? That every time you look at me, I forget how to breathe? He stood then, slowly, his expression softening. That's all I needed to hear. Her heart pounded as he stepped closer. The space between them vanished, replaced by the sound of her pulse in her ears. She should have moved away, said something to stop this before it went too far, but she didn't. She couldn't. His hand brushed against hers, a light, trembling touch that sent sparks up her arm. You don't know what this is doing to me, he said quietly. If I kiss you now, he stopped, his voice catching, I won't stop. Her breath came out uneven, her voice barely more than a whisper. Then don't. The words hung there between them, fragile, dangerous, final. For a heartbeat, the world stopped spinning. His gaze dropped to her lips, her heart stumbled, and then fade to black. The moment stretched into silence, leaving only the sound of the rain outside and the echo of everything that hadn't been said. The world seemed to shift the morning everything fell apart. It started with whispers, voices in the kitchen, doors closing too quickly, footsteps that stopped when she walked by. Then came the message from her best friend, we need to talk. Now. Her stomach dropped before she even opened the door. Her best friend stood there, eyes wide, betrayal carved into every line of her face. How long? She asked, her voice trembling. How long have you been lying to me? She wanted to deny it, to explain, to somehow make sense of something that had never meant to happen, but the words wouldn't come. Because the truth was written all over her. The way her hands shook. The way she couldn't look up. The way her friend already knew. It's not what you think, she said softly. I never meant for. For what? Her friend's voice cracked. For me to find out? For him to break every rule we grew up with? The words cut deep. She felt them like a bruise spreading inside her chest. And then he appeared behind them, drawn by the sound. His presence filled the hallway, calm but charged, like the air before a storm. Enough, he said quietly, but there was no hiding the pain in his eyes. Her best friend turned on him, furious tears in her eyes. How could you? She's my best friend. You're supposed to be the one who protects me, not. He didn't fight back. He didn't raise his voice. He just stood there, shoulders tense, gaze steady. I didn't plan this, he said. But I'm not going to apologize for how I feel. The silence that followed was heavy and final. Her best friend shook her head and walked away, slamming the door behind her. She stood frozen, her throat thick, tears stinging her eyes. We just hurt her, she whispered. He stepped closer, his voice low, rough around the edges. We hurt everyone. But pretending would have hurt worse. She couldn't take it anymore, the guilt, the confusion, the ache of wanting something that felt impossible. So she packed her bag. She didn't say goodbye. She couldn't. By the time the sky turned gray, she was already halfway down the street, the rain just beginning to fall. The same rain that had once trapped them together now blurred everything she saw. It felt almost poetic, like the universe was reminding her how it all began, and how it had to end. She found shelter under a bus stop, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. Her phone buzzed once, his name lighting up the screen. She stared at it for a long time before letting it go dark again. The sound of approaching footsteps made her look up. And there he was, soaked through, breathing hard, eyes burning with the kind of desperation that made her heart twist. You can't just walk away, he said, voice breaking through the rain. She shook her head, unable to meet his gaze. You saw her face. You saw what this did. I can't stay here and keep pretending this is okay. He took a step closer. It isn't okay, he admitted. But neither is losing you. She closed her eyes. They'll never forgive us. Maybe not. His voice softened, but the conviction didn't waver. But I'd rather lose them all than lose you. She opened her eyes, and for the first time, she saw it, the truth in his expression, raw and unguarded. He wasn't the boy she'd known all her life anymore. He was a man standing in the rain, choosing her even when everything was against them. Lightning split the sky, followed by a low, distant rumble. The world seemed to hold its breath. And then, before she could think or speak, he closed the distance between them. One hand found hers, cold and trembling, the other cupped her cheek as if she were something precious he'd almost lost. She felt the rain slide down his skin, dripping onto hers, the air between them humming with everything they'd been too afraid to say. When he kissed her, it wasn't quiet or hidden, it was open, defiant, and full of everything they'd tried to deny. It wasn't a secret anymore. Somewhere behind them, voices gasped. His family had followed him out. Her best friend stood frozen by the doorway, eyes wide with shock. He didn't stop. When he finally pulled away, his forehead rested against hers, breath mingling with rain. Let them see, he whispered. Let them all see. Tears mixed with the rain on her cheeks. You'll lose them, she whispered back. He smiled, a small, certain, heartbreakingly gentle smile. Maybe. But I won't lose you. For a long moment, no one moved. The rain fell harder, washing everything clean, the anger, the fear, the pretense. And then she realized something. Love wasn't always about perfection or timing. Sometimes it was about courage, the kind that shows itself when you have every reason to walk away but don't. She reached up, fingers brushing the back of his neck, drawing him close again. The voices behind them faded. The world blurred. All that remained was him. And the kiss that changed everything. Dizzy, end of story. Dizzy.